He slid the small velvet box across the table with trembling hands. "I knew from the moment I saw you in that faded sweater and those worn-out jeans," he said, his voice breaking. "It was never about what you wore, it was everything about who you are." As tears filled her eyes, Emma realized her little test had revealed something far more valuable than she could have ever imagined. If you're touched by this story of love that sees beyond appearances, hit that like button and subscribe to see more heartwarming stories that remind us what truly matters in relationships. Emma stood in front of her closet, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. Tonight was her first date with James, a man she'd met through a mutual friend who had spoken highly of him. Too highly, perhaps. Successful entrepreneur, drives a Tesla, lives in that new luxury high-rise downtown. The descriptions had set off warning bells in Emma's mind. She'd been down this road before, charming men who seemed perfect until they revealed their true colors. Men who valued status over substance, who measured worth by price tags. Her last relationship had ended 6 months ago when her ex-boyfriend had made a snide comment about her modest career as a kindergarten teacher at a charity gala. "It's cute that you work with kids," he'd said loudly enough for his colleagues to hear, "but don't you want to do something more significant?" Emma's fingers brushed against the new dress she'd bought just yesterday, a beautiful emerald green number that complemented her eyes and had cost nearly half her monthly discretionary budget. She'd been so excited about wearing it tonight. But now, a different idea took shape in her mind. What if she didn't dress to impress? What if, instead, she deliberately wore something below her usual standards? A test, of sorts. Before she could talk herself out of it, Emma pushed past the new dress and reached for the back of her closet. She pulled out a pair of jeans that had faded years ago, with a small, barely noticeable patch on one knee where she'd repaired them rather than throwing them away. Next came an oversized sweater her mother had given her 3 Christmases ago, comfortable but certainly not flattering, with pills of fabric forming on the sleeves from years of wear. Emma studied her reflection in the mirror. She looked ordinary. Comfortable. Like someone running weekend errands, not someone going on a first date at one of the most talked-about new restaurants in the city. Her friends would be horrified. But that was precisely the point. If James was the type to judge her by her appearance, better to know now than 3 months in when she was already attached. She applied minimal makeup, pulled her hair into a simple ponytail, and slipped on her oldest pair of sneakers. The butterflies in her stomach multiplied. Was this a terrible idea? Would she regret this experiment before the appetizers even arrived? Too late now. Her phone buzzed with a text from James, "Just parked. See you inside in 5. The restaurant was everything Emma had heard about: ambient lighting, sleek modern furniture, waitstaff dressed better than most people did for weddings. Emma felt increasingly self-conscious as the hostess led her to a table, feeling the sideways glances from other diners in their fine attire. She spotted James immediately. He stood as she approached, and Emma's heart sank a little. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine in his tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt open at the collar. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his smile revealed teeth that had definitely benefited from expensive dental work. He was even more handsome than his profile picture. And here she was, looking like she'd come straight from cleaning out her garage. "Emma?" he asked, his eyes taking her in. "That's me," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Nice to meet you, James." He pulled out her chair. "The pleasure is mine. I've been looking forward to this all week." Emma waited for the flicker of disappointment to cross his face, for his smile to tighten at the corners, for his eyes to dart around the restaurant to see if anyone had noticed his date's inappropriate attire. But it didn't come. Instead, he sat down across from her, still smiling warmly. "So, Ryan tells me you're a kindergarten teacher?" he asked, unfolding his napkin. "Yes, going on 6 years now," Emma replied, studying his face for any sign of judgment. "That's incredible," James said, and something in his tone made Emma pause. It takes a special kind of person to work with young children. My sister's a fourth-grade teacher, and the stories she tells, I don't know how you educators do it. The patience alone. Emma found herself relaxing slightly. It can be challenging, but there's nothing like seeing a child's face when they finally grasp a concept they've been struggling with. The waiter appeared at their table, handing them leather-bound menus. Emma opened hers and immediately felt her stomach tighten at the prices. She'd known this place was expensive, but seeing the actual numbers made her palms sweat. The chef's tasting menu is supposed to be exceptional, James suggested. Would you be interested in trying that? Emma hesitated. The tasting menu was the most expensive option by far. Actually, I was thinking of just getting an appetizer and maybe splitting a main course, she said, testing him further. James didn't miss a beat. That sounds perfect. I'm not actually that hungry either. What appetizer were you thinking? For the next 2 hours, Emma waited for the other shoe to drop. She waited for James to make a comment about her clothes, to check out other women in the restaurant, to talk endlessly about his accomplishments or possessions. But he did none of those things. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions about her work, laughed genuinely at her stories about her students, and shared his own experiences growing up in a family of educators. He spoke about his business, a tech startup focused on developing affordable educational software for underfunded schools, with passion but not arrogance. When Emma mentioned her volunteer work at a local literacy program, his eyes lit up. That's amazing. One of my goals with my company is to eventually create a foundation that provides free technology and training to literacy programs. Would you mind telling me more about your experience? What works, what doesn't? By the time dessert arrived, a single tiramisu they agreed to share, Emma was feeling increasingly guilty about her little test. James hadn't just passed, he'd made her question why she'd felt the need to test him at all. I have a confession to make, she said suddenly, setting down her fork. James looked up, curious. Oh? This isn't. I don't usually dress like this, she admitted, gesturing to her outfit. I actually bought a new dress for tonight, but then I decided to wear this instead as a sort of test. She expected him to be offended, but instead, James laughed. I figured it might be something like that. Emma blinked. You did? He nodded. Ryan mentioned you'd had some bad experiences with guys who were more interested in appearances than substance. And when you walked in wearing that outfit to a place like this, I thought you might be seeing what I was really like. Emma felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. I'm sorry. That was probably unfair of me. James shook his head. Don't be sorry. Look, I get it. Dating can be a minefield, especially in a city where so many people are obsessed with status. For what it's worth, I think you look beautiful. In this old thing? Emma said skeptically, plucking at her sweater. Yes, James said simply. Because you're comfortable in your own skin. That's rare, and it's attractive. Emma felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Thank you for understanding. Besides, James added with a mischievous smile, if we're confessing things, I have one too. What's that? This suit? It's the only nice one I own. I bought it for my sister's wedding last year, and I wear it to every important occasion. My friends tease me mercilessly about it. Emma laughed, feeling the last of her defenses melt away. Well, it's a very nice suit. And that's a very nice sweater, he countered, his eyes twinkling. When the check came, James reached for it, but Emma put her hand out. Let me get half, she said. How about I get dinner, and you can get our next date? James suggested. If you want there to be a next date, that is. Emma smiled. I'd like that. 6 months later, Emma and James sat at the same table in the same restaurant. This time, Emma wore the emerald green dress she'd bought for their first date, and James wore his one good suit. They'd just finished a celebration dinner, James's company had secured major funding that would allow him to launch the educational foundation he'd dreamed of, with Emma as a consultant on the literacy programs. "Do you remember what you were wearing the first time we came here?" James asked, a strange nervousness in his voice. Emma laughed. "How could I forget? That ratty old sweater and my patched jeans. I still can't believe I did that." "I'm glad you did," James said softly. "It told me so much about you, that you valued character over appearances, that you weren't afraid to go against convention, that you were testing me because you'd been hurt before and were brave enough to protect yourself." Emma reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "And you passed with flying colors." "I have something for you," James said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." He slid the small velvet box across the table with trembling hands. "I knew from the moment I saw you in that faded sweater and those worn-out jeans," he said, his voice breaking. "It was never about what you wore, it was everything about who you are." Emma opened the box with shaking fingers to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Tears filled her eyes as she realized her little test had revealed something far more valuable than she could have ever imagined, a man who saw her, truly saw her, regardless of what she wore or how she presented herself to the world. "Emma," James said, moving to kneel beside her chair, "will you marry me?" Around them, the restaurant had gone quiet, other diners watching with smiles and a few wiping away tears of their own. "Yes," Emma whispered, then louder, "yes." As James slipped the ring onto her finger and the restaurant erupted in applause, Emma thought about the journey that had brought them here. How a simple test, wearing cheap clothes to a fancy restaurant, had led her to the most authentic relationship she'd ever known. Later that night, as they walked hand in hand under the stars, Emma stopped and turned to James. "You know what I just realized?" "What's that?" he asked, his arm slipping around her waist. "That sweater I wore on our first date? It's now my favorite piece of clothing." James laughed and pulled her close. "And it always will be mine, too." In that moment, Emma understood that true love wasn't about designer labels or impressive appearances. It was about seeing beyond the surface to the person underneath, their values, their heart, their soul. And sometimes, the most valuable tests in life are the ones we create for ourselves, even if they involve nothing more complicated than an old sweater and a pair of faded jeans. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the simplest tests. Emma and James's journey reminds us that in a world obsessed with appearances, the ability to see beyond the surface is perhaps the most valuable quality we can find in a partner. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate authentic connections and remind us what truly matters in relationships. Share in the comments below, have you ever tested someone in your life, or been tested yourself? What did you learn from the experience? Until next time, remember that the most beautiful outfit you can wear is authenticity, and the most attractive quality you can possess is the ability to see the beauty in others, no matter what they're wearing.